Challengers is going online. Rostermania is about to pop off. New maps might make or break some teams, as well as season 3 of the Elite and Challengers getting ready to kick off. And there's an extra special spice coming in season 3. We're going to cover all of it and more this week in Challengers. Now, obviously, this show is me and Enigma breaking it all down for you. But in this little bit of a lull after Major 2, as well as before we get ready to kick on up into the Challenger season, Enigma is taking a well-deserved family holiday. We support that. We support him being a loving father to, of course, his partner and his child. So he is unfortunately not here. But because of that, I, of course, had to put a very fantastic image of him up here. That is, of course, when we were in Las Vegas at the World Series of Warzone, where we thought we ordered just some normal peanut butter milkshakes. And of course, in everything in America, you get what's on your screen right there, which it was insane. It was delicious, don't get me wrong. But we had no idea that we ordered milkshakes that came with a full slice of cake. It was absolutely wild. But enough of that. Let's dive into the action. You can see the pit here put out a pretty insane tweet here today saying, keep hearing the same rumor regarding Challenger structure next season. We've been told by multiple people, allegedly, there's internal discussions this month to move Challengers next season to a fully online entity due to Opens operating in the red. This could also be down to proposed changes in the Pro League, more teams and online play-in opportunities, each event, etc. Okay? Now, this is a really big bomb to drop, right? Just onto the timeline from the pit that's there. And obviously, you know, we love Challengers. We love covering it. But this feels like something that is got some weight to it. Obviously, CDC Intel has some stuff to kind of lean in with there. It's basically retweeting it saying, I've not heard this that much, but it wouldn't surprise me entirely if it was true. It would completely kill the scene if they went ahead with it. LAN is the only way to prove your ability. Online results are completely partial and just host wars and how good your PC is. Ben J had some interesting things to say here as well as part of it, saying, don't know how that makes much sense considering open bracket participation directly leads into spectator funnel being a big part of DreamHack, especially. We get a response back saying, how does it not make sense? The league doesn't want to have to pay the cost for Challengers events. This has been evidently clear. They're made the host teams pay the cost in the past and wouldn't contribute towards it. And Ben kind of gives a little bit of insider intel saying they've subsidized Challengers lands costs on and off since the league started. DreamHack is a different story for what it's worth. Not sure what / or even if the CDL contributes economically for those events. This is where CDL / EFG need to find a title sponsor, maybe Xbox, for Challengers though. This is a really interesting topic, right? That I think we're going to hear a lot more of over the course of the coming year, right? I think Challengers has really kind of pulled a lot of eyes towards it this year. But also at that point, if Call of Duty is looking at it and saying, hey, we're running in the red like massively in these Challengers events, maybe we need to reconsider how these things are structured. But the one thing I do love that Ben brings up there is maybe something like a title sponsor to try and help sort of fund and maybe not let the Call of Duty League have the full burden of Challengers that's there. And one tweet that I think was really cool was actually from EasyMac, who kind of outlined his ideas on maybe how we could achieve this, saying you switch Challengers to console, you sell Microsoft on an Xbox sponsorship, you partner with smaller TOs to include locals into the Pro Point circuit, you start elites before the CDL begins, and you add incentives for CDL teams to have academies. He also says they really need to stop having Challengers battle CDL too much. In my opinion, they'd have much higher viewership and engagement and not battling the pros. Change them to a midweek schedule and make it so Challengers is 17 plus, minimum 16 plus would be better. This is a really interesting idea because I think there's been this little bit of a lurker of like, hey, we want COD to go back to console, right? And you think back to the MLG days, it was all based off of console. That was there. And I love a couple of the other things that EasyMac brings up here too, but I think trying to integrate with a big title sponsor can do nothing but good for the Challenger scene that's there. And one thing to note here is these last 2 points that I really, really like as well, right? Partnering with smaller TOs to include locals into Pro Point circuit. There are so many different lands happening around the country at LAN centers. People are putting on these great events that people will travel towards. And I think basically the CDL recognizing that budding event, having some type of application process where maybe you could apply and say, hey, here's what our event, we'd love to be able to consider. And the CDL can then come back and say, okay, great. If you would like to be considered for Pro Points, here are the things that, we can't obviously have competing sponsors. So, just for example, Monster is a title sponsor of the CDL. You probably can't throw another energy drink sponsor on your event if it's going to feed into CDL Pro points. Things of that nature, maybe they could go ahead and leverage and give back to. But it's also starting the elites before CDL begins. I think that's a really interesting sort of thing as well, because to me, it's like the weekend is entirely eaten up by the CDL, but we have basically Monday through Wednesday, sometimes Thursday, to be able to have challengers on, right? Right now, we have this sort of Wednesday, Thursday schedule, even seeing that shift a little bit to just Tuesday, Wednesday, which I believe it was at one point, where if you can just have Tuesday, Wednesday, let challengers be able to have all those odds, and then you can use challengers to then lead into the CDL as well. And we can have almost nonstop Call of Duty action all week long. And then obviously this last one of adding incentives for CDL teams to have academies. We've seen that not only just, how beneficial that is from maybe a just sort of like organization side of where these teams that are seemingly on more academy style teams of the CDL rosters definitely feel like they're getting maybe more practice, they're getting more support, they have this ability to have some support staff that they can rely on. And I think obviously if there's incentives for CDL teams to have academy teams, that would be a really fun way to now start to get more support for some of these players, some of these teams, maybe some, whether that's monetary or just through eyes, maybe that's through the content machine that is through the org, things that are there. I think it'd be really, really interesting. There was also a tweet that came out from one of the owners of Torn, who had a really good point as well, kind of along that same idea, saying orgs and players have to step up and create more content, stream scrims, matches, anything, post clips across socials. There's a fan base for challengers. Bush proved it this year, but you have to put in the extra effort. Players got to do more than just play, and orgs got to do more than post a graphic every now and then. And I actually agree with this. We've talked about this many times on this show where, and I like that he says both orgs and players have to do this. I think it's really easy for us to sit here and yell at players all day long to make content, put themselves out there. But I also think if you're one of these organizations who's in challengers, you also have a little bit of a due diligence to help provide maybe ways and systems for your players to be able to do that. Because if we're able to pull in more eyes onto challengers, it makes reaching out to an Xbox, a Sony, any of these big, sort of, endemic sponsors to be able to make this ask of sponsoring challengers. It makes it that much easier when they can take a look at the tier 2 scene of Call of Duty and say, wow, there's some real movement here. There's some eyeballs. They're creating content. Look at these numbers that these different various orgs are pulling right now. It sweetens the pot, honestly, that's there. And I think that, this is a great idea and just sort of something that goes in on top of it. But on the flip side, do you want to invest all this time, energy to create content and make a brand for yourself if maybe potentially next year the Challengers League just goes all online? Very curious to see what more comes out of this. It was kind of blowing up the timeline here today. I would have loved to be able to talk about this with Andy because I'm sure he has a lot of thoughts as well. But I want to know from you guys, how do we feel about this? Obviously with some of these things, would you like that if somebody like an Xbox or Microsoft was able to come in and say, hey, Challengers is playing on consoles, you guys have to come on in, and maybe that's how we get more LAN opens and things like that. But very curious to see what this comes in the next couple months. But enough of that side of the drama. Let's maybe go with a little more drama that we're used to in Challengers. Because, of course, Season 2 just wrapped on up, and we're already starting to see maybe a little bit of Rostermania hitting the timeline. Come back and tell me if this happens, because we're going to post this, and I guarantee you there's going to be some type of huge Rostermania news that breaks after we've already recorded and posted this. So come back and tell me what it was, because right now we don't have much. But one thing that we do know is that you can see Ben J talking about it, saying expecting almost half of the Call of Duty League to either make or heavily consider changes during this Rostermania period. Some may trial a player or two and decide it's not worth it, but this is trending towards a very active window. Now, obviously, this is called This Week in Challengers, but as we all know, any type of Rostermania or roster change that happens in the CDL has a little bit of a trickle-down effect into Challengers, because if you have maybe a player who in the CDL was looking okay, they were looking good, maybe they just, weren't gelling with the team or something, if they're now suddenly on the market, a lot of top Challengers teams start to look at that and say, well, hey, here's this really good player, let's try and get them on our team, because not only are they going to help you be a formidable roster just in Challengers, they also bring some of those pro points from being in the CDL as well. We're starting to get that time of year where pro points definitely matter. But to kind of go over just some of the news, we're just going to scroll basically CDL intel, because he highlighted all of the moves that were here. kick it off. So when we kind of talk about some of the players, they're going to be moving away from the CDL that may be able to be picked up in challengers. These are some big, heavy names. Okay, so we're kicking off with none other than Capsidal, who's being dropped from Vancouver Surge, was a superstar, a rock star, a linchpin of that Bush Gaming roster. Gets the call up to Vancouver Surge, and 2 weeks later is now dropped yet again, which I feel for Cap, because like, okay, is he magically just gonna get his slot back on the Bush? Maybe, given some other information we're about to look at, but it's like, what does he do there? Or is he gonna have to go join a different org? It just really sucks. We also see a player like Nero getting released from the Carolina Royal Ravens. I'm not going to go into everything about Nero. It's on Reddit and the timeline. If you want to know why maybe Nero is being released, you can go find that, maybe some additional context. But all I know is that Nero being dropped from, of course, a CDL team, a challengers team may be looking at Nero and saying, yo, that's, a really formidable player that we can have on our roster. Would be curious to see if he ends up landing on any rosters that's there. And back when I was talking about with Cap, this is why, because maybe Cap might have a little bit of a saving grace. He might be able to make his way back onto the Bush, because apparently the Royal Ravens are targeting Fire with a trial period expected this week. We've been obviously huge fans of Fire here on the show. We've been begging, when is he going to get his chance? When is he going to get his chance? And trialing with the Royal Ravens could be definitely a good way. I do wonder with Lou, though. He's been in this position before where he's gotten the call up to maybe not a great CDL team. Does he do it again? Does he feel like, hey, maybe I have a little bit more fire in the tank? Maybe he feels more confident about this roster. If he does get that ask to make, the jump from challengers up into the CDL, will he be able to maybe have a little bit more impact than he did previously? Because I'll be honest with you, I could fully expect maybe Lou coming into this and saying, yeah, we trialed and it was okay, but I'm not looking to move up onto a bottom 4 team. I want to be able to make my way and have a little bit of respect in my name, that we're going to come into a system, into a team that wants to win, that wants to push everything forward. So with a lot of, changes going on with the Royal Ravens, maybe that could also help as well. Being able to see just some of the players that are there, and maybe, who you're trying to be able to pick on up to be able to kind of maybe match up with Fire there to make a formidable roster. And one of the last ones that we're kind of seeing here across 2 left, one is that the Falcons are actually trialing QK in place of Pred and Xnid. Obviously, we had a huge thing about QK being one of just a monster player in challengers, right? Has been just so fantastic. It feels like every single stage has been absolutely going crazy. Some highlight moments, putting up a mixtape that's there. And so for the Falcons to be able to maybe recognize that and want to pull up QK is huge. In place of Pred or Xnid is very, very interesting. It kind of looks like maybe what I would love to be able to say is maybe if QK can make their way onto some type of flex, get Kiz to that sub role, maybe alongside Xnid, or maybe alongside Pred rather, and then figure out some type of the AR situation. Obviously, you have Celium that's there as well. So, maybe you would have to see, obviously Xnid being out, you get QK in, maybe shuffle around some of those roles. Falcons, that's a very, very scary looking roster. Now, obviously, QK, there's some stuff about obviously moving and coming over to America. Could be a little bit of culture shock. You got to settle into the team. It's a whole brand new area that you're in. But I've no doubt that the Falcons will try and do their best to, if they choose to move forward with QK, will do their best to make sure that he feels very comfortable. But that's also, yet again, a big piece of one of these challenger rosters that if we lose QK, that's going to open up the door for some other players. And lastly, we see Real is expected to replace Trakes on the Heretics that is there. Now, Trakes has been in the challenger circuit before as well, a really fantastic player. Obviously, kind of coming on in and maybe not finding the success you would have liked on that Heretics roster, then bringing Real back on in. Yet again, Real was playing obviously down here in challengers as well, and being able to lose Real, and now we have Trakes coming back on through. It's just, I wanted to tee up some of the roster mania that we might see sort of over the next week, right? Obviously, if when Andy's back, we'll hopefully maybe have some more solidified rosters, because I would love to be able to see where some of these key pieces of the challengers ecosystem land. Season 3 of Black Ops 7 has also brought us some potential new maps making their way into ranked. You can see here, Treyarch, they said they wanted to kick off a week-long map evaluation in partnership with the COD League. So they added for Overload, Utopia and Gridlock, for Hardpoint, Sake, Gridlock, and Clifftown, and for Search and Destroy, Fringe, Plaza, and Toshin. They say your feedback and gameplay data during this map evaluation will help the teams decide which maps to move forward with for Major 3 and beyond. Obviously, this has a big impact on challengers because we follow a lot of the same map, not a lot of, we follow the exact same map set as the CDL that's there. So the CDL is going to be able to change some maps. We're going to see that in challengers. Now, we've seen some teams be very, very good on particular maps and modes. We've also seen some of these, series go in where it's like you're seeing 2 maps across a 5-game series. That's not exactly fun. I saw some tweets. I wasn't able to find it, but so I think some people seeing like, wow, we're watching, triple exposure, gone through, or triple scar. It's just like, okay, is that fun? Personally to me, no, it's not. I love that we have some new maps making their way on in. With some early analysis here, we have some CDL pros and people making their ideas known. Colt Havoc, he said for Hardpoint, big thumbs up on Clifftown and Sake. Gridlock maybe needs a little bit more time to cook, maybe need a change in some of the HPs that are there. Overload says do not play Utopia. Gridlock maybe a little bit. And then for S&D, Fringe and Toshin, feeling good about Plaza, not so much. Says Utopia overload points are way too close to the ball spawns, making caps super easy and fast. The most surprising map was how well Toshin S&D played. Excited to continue testing these in ranked. I love it, man. I love being able to see some new maps make their way into the pool because I think we need a little bit of variety. Toshin's a really interesting looking map. I'll be curious to see, how does that play in S&D. But also Sake has been really, really fun as a map. When I played it in pubs, I was like, ooh, I could really see this being a hardpoint map. It really feels like it's a map to me that would be one of those ones that really would hardcore reward teams that understand spawns and rotations, wanting to play cutoffs. Maybe, you have some real solid lanes for your SMGs to get mixy, get a little bit lost, but also some real like just heady power positions for your ARs. I think it'd be really, really, really curious. And he actually had a follow-up tweet to this saying, Toshin is ass. What was I smoking? Gridlock Hardpoint is good. Plaza S&D is good. Gridlock Overload has potential. So you can see a little bit more testing. Octane also has some thoughts as well, saying of all the newly added maps for ranked, only Toshin S&D and Utopia Overload are 100% a no for me. Toshin is Scar 2.0, 1 bomb every round, and Utopia is too small / portal locations are bad. Every other map is playable / viable with a few tweaks maybe, an example being Sake P3 spawns. We actually have Maskrons going ahead and replying to Octane, saying Utopia Overload objective zones are being pushed back a bit, which should help. And Octane says, W Change, been absolutely loving the map additions for ranked. That is there. So, I mean, I see some early testing coming in from obviously some pros, some scrims going on as well. I'll be curious to see what kind of map changes we get. I think we are desperately in need of a little bit of a map pool update. I think it'd be really fun to have just these maps that teams can kind of be a little bit wonky on. That's always been one of my favorite things in Call of Duty, where if you have a map and mode combo that you're good, that nobody else is good at, it sometimes can be just a real buff to have like an auto veto that goes your way. And then maybe you have another map that you feel really strong on. So you kind of are making this team in that veto process, ask, okay, which map do we really want to chow them on? And it kind of makes the pick and veto process just a little bit more dynamic, makes it matter a little bit more. Right now, it doesn't feel necessarily, I don't see maps and modes and vetoes that come out and I go, oh, wow, that's like huge. It's just, feels like pretty standard. Like there's like the maps that players don't want to play on, and that's what we're vetoing, right? So very, very curious to see what comes about with some of these map mode combos. What do we eventually land on? What's getting rotated out? What's now coming on in? I think this will be really fun to see, not only obviously from the CDL side, but also challengers and which, maps that come on in, what teams can adapt the fastest, who's going to be able to have sort of this ace up their sleeve map mode combo that might help them, be able to steal away games in these series that they shouldn't be winning games in. Really has the opportunity, like I said, to make or break, I think, some teams depending on what map and mode combos we end up with. And obviously, I know we just wrapped up season 2 of the Elite and of Major 2, and everything that's going on there. But we want to at least just give you some dates, some things that you can look forward to. We're going to be talking a lot more about this next week because I think Andy and I want to have a really cool conversation around what's coming in here with season 3 of the Elite, because it's not just a normal Elite. There's some extra added implications added onto it that are going to be really fun. But a couple of dates that you do need to mark down that you can see here. April 18th and 19th. This is the Elite Season 3 qualifier. So as a little bit of a refresher for you, the top 8 teams that made the bracket in Season 2, so they made it out of the group stage, they made it to that bracket, are automatically brought in to the season 3 qualifier, to that, not the qualifier, to the group stage. Okay, that is there. So that means we have 4 spots now through the qualifier that can be earned in order to make your way into, of course, to the season 3 elite. Now, big asterisks here because we just talked about all the roster mania going on, and we saw it with season 2 where some of the teams that would have had a guaranteed spot, if you make enough changes, you have to make your way through that qualifier side. So in season 2, we actually were looking at 7 teams trying to make it out of that qualifier into the season 2 elite. We'll have to wait and see if that is similar here with season 3. If things all kind of stay the same, then we're looking for 4 teams through this qualifier. So April 18th and 19th, I believe that's a Saturday, Sunday. That is when that will kick off, okay? Then that moves us into just that next week in the April 22nd and April 23rd. That is, of course, when we will start week 1 of the season 3 elite. So as a reminder, you go through 2 different groups. We go through group stages where everybody gets to play each other. And then we take the top 8. They move it onto a bracket. They play through the bracket to be able to become the champions of season 3. Now, I said earlier, season 3 has a little bit of extra spice added to it because not only will you be taking home some cash, some pro points for being the elite season 3 champion, you also will have a guaranteed spot, or not even guaranteed, you'll be getting the spot at DreamHack Atlanta for the CDL Major 3 Pro-Am, okay? So there's a little bit of how this works. We're going to go over here. Sorry, folks. A little bit of a look at how we're going to do this and what's going on. So you can see here for DreamHack Atlanta for CDL, it's not just going to be these 8 teams that are making it on. Okay, so I believe for the online stage, every team will make it to, of course, DreamHack Atlanta and being able to go from the CDL, right? So there will still be a Challengers Open happening at DreamHack Atlanta. Okay, so this doesn't magically stop the Challengers Open from happening, but you can see here where the format will be 16 teams split into 4 groups of 4. There's going to be a GSL into an 8-team double elimination bracket. So you have the opportunity for some of these bottom end CDL teams. Normally, they might not even be at the major. They might be having to play in through that lower bracket side. Well, now you are going to start in that group stage, but you'll be joined by 4 challengers teams. Okay. So you can see here, obviously, of course, this is all our great CDL teams, but these bottom 4 are the ones that you should be focusing on. Okay. So you can see down there in the bottom right, Challengers Elite, NA, Season 3 winner. Challengers Elite, EMEA, Season 3 winner. Those 2 teams will be making their way to DreamHack Atlanta to compete in the Pro-Am. They will be joined by, of course, the Major 1 Open winners in Rock Esports and the Major 2 Open winners in P7 Notorious. So opportunity for 2 more teams to be able to make their way on in and battle some of the CDL pros. This is going to be really fun. I'm always a huge fan of the Pro-Am events because I think we've seen in the past there's these challenger rosters who they look really good. And we've seen that oftentimes if teams are looking to make a last minute change into potentially Major 4, into obviously into champs that are there, even into EWC, right? Kind of in the postseason, these are some of the players that perform well at this Pro-Am. Those are some of the first ones that you're looking to pick up that's there. Andy and I will talk a lot more about this next week because I think it's going to be fun once we get a little bit of a land on some of the rosters, how we're looking, especially after the elite qualifier. I think we maybe might pick some of our favorite teams to be some of the squads going to DreamHack Atlanta, obviously, that are there. But very, very excited. So season 3, it's got a little bit of extra spice added to it. It's going to be really fun to watch and lock on in because, like we said, the winners of NA and EMEA will be making their way to DreamHack Atlanta. So obviously it may be a little bit of a lull in challengers. I think what it does kind of bode well, we have a lot to look forward to in the coming weeks, okay? A lot of roster mania happening between CDL and challengers that's there. Obviously, in just like a week or 2, we kick off the season 3. We kick off season 3 elite with the qualifiers, and those are gonna be really fun to watch, as well as all the cups and everything going on as well. So you want to make sure you stay locked in. I know we just wrapped up Major 2 in Birmingham. We're already setting our eyes on DreamHack Atlanta. It is going to be fun. But we are going to be here every single step of the way, helping bring you all of the information. With that said, that's all we got for you this week.